Hi, it's Jordan Teen 1, and I'm very excited to share with you today a new product from the makers of Rainbow Loom, and this is called the Loomiloom. So what it is 3 different sizes of Loomilooms, and these are these little plastic pieces, and they allow you to make 3 different size magic rings. You also get a double-sided hook with 2 grips, and inside you get this nice booklet that gives you instructions on how to start your magic ring and also to make a small ball. So let me just break it down and show you each individual item that you're going to get in your Loomiloom package. You're going to receive a double-ended hook, so you can see it has the hook on either end. And let me just show you the length. It's approximately 6 inches in length, so it's a pretty nice size. Now when they had sent me a prototype, it was a little bit less than 5 inches, and my one complaint about this was when I was looming, the one end was digging into the palm of my hand. So I'm so happy that they made this longer, so now you can see when I'm looming, this totally clears the other end of my hand and it's not going to make it irritated. The grips are really nice that are on here. They are removable, so if you wanted to do a bracelet or a project that you did need to utilize both ends, you could just take off your grips, do your looping on this side, and then just slide it right over and use the other side. Now if you're doing Loomigurumi, I'm sure you're going to want to leave the grips on. And it's nice because everybody has different size hands, so you can just move this to wherever is most comfortable. And the actual hook size itself, I'm not really sure what to compare it to. I know there's different numbers of hooks, like 2.5 millimeters or 3 millimeters. So it's probably around there. It's on the smaller side. Now if you are familiar with the Rainbow Loom metal hook, this is what I typically use. So if you want to compare the actual hook sizes here, you can see that this one's definitely larger. And let me just zoom in here a little bit. But the one nice thing is that if you look at the depth of this hook, you can see that it's nice and deep, so it is going to grab your bands very well. Now I do like the regular metal Rainbow Loom hook, and again I find that nice and deep as well. So it's really just a matter of preference, but this is definitely a nice tool to have. And if you do crochet with yarn, usually the smaller the hook, the finer that your work is going to turn out. But with rubber bands, I don't think it really makes that much of a difference because each rubber band is the same exact size. You're also going to receive 3 of these little plastic Loomilooms, and they are all 3 different. The first one has 4 fins, that's what they're calling them in the book, the 4 sides here, and that is going to allow you to make a magic ring of 4. So a magic ring is just a little circle that you start with to pretty much begin any Loomigurumi creation. In the middle here, this has a count of 5, so if you look at the tip it looks like a star, and that has the 5 fins, so that's going to let you make a magic ring of 5. And then the last one here has 6 fins, that's going to let you make a magic ring of 6. The last thing that you're going to receive is this beautifully illustrated little Loomiloom instruction book. So there are some beautiful designs in here. The 2 Loomigurumi artists that are shared in here are Isalicious Designs. She was kind of the start of this whole process. I would call her the mother of Loomigurumi. And then also Looming with Cheryl has some really neat designs as well. And then as far as your bracelets, they feature the pictures from Expert Looms and also Suzanne HB. So inside this book they are going to give you the foundation and just a few basics on how to start a magic ring and how to do increases and decreases, but they're not actually going to show you how to do these exact designs. For that, you can tune into YouTube and you can search for Loomigurumi or Loom Band Crochet or any of those type of terms to find everyone else's designs. So let me just give you a quick peek inside here. So you can see here's some more creations. We have Kate's amazing Izzy Busy doll and some of her outfits. So you're going to find the instruction on how to use these Loomilooms to start the magic ring, and then also how to go through a stitch. Now they don't usually call it a stitch, they're calling it a knot as far as the terminology goes, but I use the word stitch. I know different artists may use different terms, but I think in general we say a stitch. So it shows you how to get started. It gives you some pictures of the pattern. They try to make it very color-coded and they try to explain every step very clearly. So it is a really handy visual guide that is going to help you get started with the basics of Loomigurumi. Now for me personally, I really like to follow along with a video tutorial, so I think if you utilize this book as well as tutorials, it's really going to make everything just fall into place and make it much more clearer. So all of the purple section here, if you look, that has to do with Loomigurumi. And I also would like to note that the way that they show going around the magic ring is it looks like they go in a clockwise direction. The way that I do it, and I think most of the other loomers do it, is we go in a counterclockwise direction, and that is going to affect the look of what you create. Like the way that they're showing this ball here, I would call this the inside, so I typically would have this side not showing. But the way that they do it in that clockwise direction, that's kind of becomes your outside. So the only way you can remedy that is if you do it that way, is when you're done your work, if you flip it completely inside out. So that's a little bit different. Now the blue section here, this is what's going to show you how to do some bracelet designs using both ends of your double hook here. And then in the back, they give just a little thumbnail of the different designers. There are some that do Loomigurumi, myself, Jordan 1, Craft Muse, and then Looming with Cheryl and Isalicious Designs. And then, of course, all of these other names that do fantastic bracelets and other creations. So I'm really honored to be included in this, and I really thank Rainbow Loom for doing that. Now I'm going to use the Loomiloom to show you how to start your magic ring to make your fortune cookie. So if you don't have the Loomiloom, that's quite okay. You can use a twist tie, or you really don't need to use anything to start your magic ring, just your fingers and a hook. I'm going to be using the new double-sided hook in this tutorial. I have a clip, so you're going to need either a clip or a stitch marker. And then as far as your band counts, it's not too many. You're only going to need about 146. And this tan color that I'm using actually came out of the Rainbow Loom camouflage pack. Now I'm going to be making a magic ring of 5. So I have my Loomiloom that has the 5 fins on it. And I'm going to be using 6 rubber bands. And then I also have a clip, so you can use a clip or a stitch marker. So what you're going to do is take your first band and you want to triple this on your Loomiloom. So you place it on, you twist, place it back on, twist, place it back on. So you can see here it's kind of high up, so you need to get this down over the lower part of the pins where it's a little bit wider. So let me just make sure that it's down all the way to the bottom here. And then they suggest that you start to the space that's right before where your fin is. So I'm going to follow their instructions, and from the bottom I'm going to slide my hook under, and you can see here how the bands are stretched out just far enough that my hook slides nice and easy underneath. Take my first rubber band, it's going to pull through under those 3 loops, back on my hook, so now I have 2 loops, so it's just straddling that tripled band, and then one band pulls through the other. So then you're going to leave this one loop on your hook, you're going to move over to the next section here. From the bottom, I'm pushing up through. Again, I'm taking my rubber band, it's going to slide under. Now you do want to make sure that the band on your hook is staying on, so you may want to use your finger. You don't have to, but you may want to. Use your finger to hold that back, pull under, get the other end back on. Now you're going to have 3 loops every time, and the band's going to pull through the other 2. Again, leave 1 on your hook. You're moving over to the next section. Pull through, get the other end back on, 3 loops, 1 through the other 2. Next section, this is our 4th band, so under, back on, 1 loop through the other 2, and then 1 more. This is band number 5, and through. So now what you're going to do is take your clip or your stitch marker, and you're going to place it on the last band on your hook. Now I always mark the last band in a row, and the reason for stitch markers is when you're working in rounds it gets very confusing. You really have no idea where you stopped and started unless you're using 2 different colors. So that's what your stitch marker or your clip is for. And some people like to put it on the last band like I do. Some other loomers like to put it on the first band. So it's really just a matter of preference. In row 2, I'm going to do an increase in every stitch, and all that means is I'm doing 2 rubber bands into every 1 stitch. So a stitch, what I'm calling a stitch, is the little sideways V on the outer edge of your magic ring. So if you're following along with the instruction book, they're just saying a loop. They're saying slide your hook through the loop. I'm calling it a stitch, and technically it's not 1 loop, it's 2 loops. So you can see here, I'm just going to leave the 1 band on my hook, and here are my 2 loops. I'm going to push through from the top to bottom, going under both loops. I'm going to take my first rubber band, it's going to pull through, get the other end back on. So again, we're dealing with 3 loops, and I'm pulling 1 through the other 2. Now, since we're doing an increase, I'm going under that very same stitch, or again, those same 2 loops, pull through my second band, back on my hook, 1 through the other 2. So then you're just working your way around. You're going to see these 2 loops. You're always pushing through from front to back, or the way that the Loomiloom is, it's top to bottom. So again, we're doing the same thing. We're doing 1 and then back through the same for your second increase. Again, move over to the next stitch. We have 1, 2, the next one. So this is our 4th increase. Back through the same. And then your very last stitch in the row is always going to be the one where your clip or stitch marker is. So we have 2 bands left and 1 stitch. Again, whoops, I just lost it there. We have 1, and then back through for your increase. And then every time you're done a row, what you're going to do is take your clip or your stitch marker, and you're just going to move it to the band that's on your hook. So I'm just going to take this off here for now. In the book they actually show 3 rows to do on your Loomiloom, but I find it a lot easier to do it off of the Loomiloom. So I'm just going to go ahead and sort of stretch this out here a little bit. I feel like it really got sort of tucked in there, and it does sort of stretch your bands out a little bit more with the Loomiloom than if you weren't using that, if you were just using a twist tie like I usually show in my tutorials. But the nice thing about the rubber bands is that they're very stretchy and they do hold their shape rather well, so it's just going to go right back. But you can see here how when we took it off of the loom it was really scrunched up like this, but what we want it to be is basically flat. So I'm just going to flatten that out. And we had started with a magic ring of 5, so that was 5 stitches. Since we doubled our count to 10 stitches, if you count the stitches around your circle now, you should have 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the last one, which is my 10th one in this case, is always going to be the last one with your clip on it. In row 3, we're going to be using 16 bands, and the pattern that we're following is 2 increases followed by a single. That's going to repeat a total of 3 times, and then you are going to have 1 stitch left over, and that's just going to get a single. So in our first stitch around here, again we're doing front to back. We're doing an increase to begin, so that's 1, back through the same for your second, and then in the next stitch we're going to be doing our second increase, so 1, 2, and in the third stitch we're doing just 1 rubber band. Next we have an increase, and the reason that I'm doing a lot of increases is I definitely still want this to be relatively flat here. So we have an increase again, and then a single. We're doing an increase, whoops, we're doing another increase, and then a single. So that's our 3rd time with that pattern, and like I said we have 1 stitch left, so in that I'm just going to do a single. Again, it's the end of the row, so I'm just going to move my clip. And once again, I'm going to try and flatten this out. I want it to be relatively flat. In the 4th row, you're going to need 24 bands, and we're doing a 2-1-2-1 pattern. So we're doing an increase to start and then in every other stitch. So in our very first stitch, we're doing an increase. And then in the second stitch a single, the third stitch gets an increase, the fourth stitch gets a single, and then we're just going to continue to repeat that. So once again, we're just really trying to widen this out, and we still want it to remain relatively flat. So hopefully everyone is getting the hang of this if you're new to Loomigurumi. Definitely takes some patience and some practice, but I think once the concept really clicks in your brain, you kind of have an aha moment, and then it just comes a little bit easier to you. At least that's the way that it worked with me. So you can see that my edges are curving in just a little bit, but that's perfectly fine. So I have just 2 stitches left now. So the second to last gets my final increase, and then my very last stitch where my clip is gets a single. I'm going to go ahead and move that clip, and again I'm just going to try and flatten that out. In row 5 you're going to need 32 bands, and the pattern is going to be 2-1-1 repeating. So just like we've been doing, we're starting with an increase. And this time we're spacing out the singles a little bit. So we have 1 single in the second stitch, and then 1 single in the third. That 4th stitch gets our next increase. And then 2 singles. So this is typical to space these out in this manner when you're building a circle. You usually start with an increase in every stitch, and then you start spacing them out, and then your rows are just going to grow bigger and bigger every time. If it gets to the point where you are done increasing and you want your bands to remain the same, or your stitch count to remain the same, you're going to just do the 1 in each, and that's going to really build up the sides of your project. For example, if you're making the ball, you need to have several rows in the middle that are just going to be 1 in each. And then once you've done enough of those rows so you get it to the length that you want, then you start to do a decrease, working backwards, really the opposite of the way you did the increases. So it's really pretty symmetrical in that way, but we're not creating a ball. But we still are following that pattern of gradually doing our increases. Whoops. Just felt like my hook didn't go under the right 2 loops there, so if that ever happens to you, just pull your hook back out and try again. Every once in a while your hook goes under loops that you don't really want it to, and usually you can tell it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like it glides through the way that it should, which is what just happened right there to me. So I have 2 more sets of this pattern, and this is our second to last row. So we are going to do 1 more row, and you'll see we're going to again space out the increases just a little bit more when we do our next row. So here's my last increase, and then 2 singles. So you can see it's really widening out quite a bit for us. In row 6 you're going to need 40 bands, and you can see the pattern is an increase followed by 3 singles this time. So again, we're starting on an increase in stitch 1, And this time, as I explained in the previous row, you can see that we're spacing out these singles to one additional stitch, so now we have our 3 singles in between. And now we have our second increase. And then again 3 singles. So this is going to get pretty large. And you may notice as you're forming it that it's sort of going to take on a little bit of a, not exactly rounded, but an octagon, just from where we do our increases. And don't worry about that, because when we put this all together, it's going to have that rounded look. Now I'm just using the typical fortune cookie kind of color here, this tan color, but you could be inventive and use different colors. Thought about maybe doing a rainbow one, but I wasn't really sure if it would take away from being able to tell that it was a fortune cookie or not. And my kids didn't think it was a good idea, so I listened to them. But you can definitely try different colors yourself. And for my other fortune cookie, I used neon orange. So I have 2 more sets of the pattern, and here if you look you can kind of see what I mean, how it almost looks like it has this octagon. And then here's my last set in the pattern. So this is my last increase. And then 3. So I'm going to go ahead and move my clip. And here is our main shape. Now what we need to do is to take our creation here, and the way we're going to form our fortune cookie is we're going to fold this in half and we're going to stitch together along the edges that are matched up. So we also need to bend this in half and make that fortune cookie shape. So we have to get these sides to link together. So that's going to be in this direction. And I do want this to be the inside of the fortune cookie. It's up to you which side you want to do, but I like this part to be the inside. It's kind of what I was talking about a little earlier in the tutorial. And this side I want to be facing the outside. So I'm going to take this, and I'm using my loose band in the upper right hand corner here. I'm going to flip this over so now it's at the bottom. I'm going to put the right and left side, I'm going to match them up, and this is where I just want the rubber bands to pinch together So I'm going to just take my hook, and here is my midpoint. I'm going to come down, let's see, 1, 2, maybe to like the third opening down. And I'm going to just push my hook through, and I'm going to push it all the way through so it's coming out the other side. I'm going to take one single rubber band, and I'm going to pull through, and I want to make sure I'm holding this in my fingers. Reach up, grab that other side. It's going to be kind of tight, and that's okay. We want it to be. Now what you can do is take an additional band and pull it through here and make a slip knot and tie it off. Or if you wanted to, you could take a clip, and I'm using a C-clip here, and you could just attach each side of the rubber band to the clip. So however you want to do it, or maybe if you want extra security, you could do both. So let me just show it by doing both here. To make that slip knot, you would just pull all the way through, get the other end back on, and I just lost it there, but I'm pulling one through the other, and make that nice and tight. So now you can see that's being pinched together. Now we're going to, let me just get this in the right spot again. So I said I wanted my clip in the upper right hand corner, and I was going to fold these two sides together, line up the stitches, and sew that together. So now you can see how that band is gathering that into the middle, and it's making our nice U shape here for the fortune cookie. Now I have 15 bands I'm going to use to stitch the outside together, and I'm not going to go the whole way across. I'm going to go across 14 sets of stitches, and I'm going to use that last band to tie it off. I want to leave the very end open to stick my little fortune paper in. And then I do have some stitch markers. I'm going to use those to help line up the stitches. So these are optional, but you will find them very helpful. You can buy these at your local craft store. So it kind of already is naturally folding where you need it to be. It's going to help line up your stitches. So if you spread this apart where it's bent, there's going to be like one stitch on the edge here. We're going to ignore that, and the next two on either side of that are going to line up. So I'm just going to count these. I'm going to line them up. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'll go up to the 5th set of stitches. And let me just slide this through all 4 loops there, through both stitches. And then line up the next one. So I'll skip a few. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Go to the next one here. And then 1, 2, 3. Now I do have this loose band that I have to attach on the opposite side here. So there are just 3 stitches in between, and this is going to attach to the stitch that's right before it here to the right. So I'm only going to be able to count 3. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going from the back through that stitch. I'm going to pick up that loose band, and then I'm going to the next stitch over and slide through all. So you're going to have the 2 stitches plus that loose band sandwiched in between. And then that's basically going to get us most of the way around as far as we need to go, because we are going to leave the end part empty. So I'm just going to get my hook. Again, there's that 1 stitch in the corner. We're going to let that alone. And I'm going to go, let's see, I'm going to go from front to back under both sets of stitches here. Take my first band and pull through both stitches. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to use my additional stitch marker here and just grab this. That way I'm not going to have to worry about it being pulled all the way through. So joining it here is a little bit difficult, I won't lie, but I think this is the neatest look to the edge and gives it the most realistic look. So I'm going through the next set of stitches. I also need to get the other end back on my hook. Don't forget to do that. Take my next band, and I always twist it so the hook is facing the opposite way, and then sort of swirl it around when I'm going through back and forth, just to try and help it from getting hung up. And then I'm going to, again, take my stitch marker, slide that on. If you don't have that, you can use a clip, or you can just hold that in your fingers. Again, up to the next set of stitches. Don't forget to get your other end of the band pulled through. So you can see here how the two stitches are sandwiched in between this outer band that we keep pulling through. Again, turning my hook backwards, sort of wiggling through, and I'm going to reattach my stitch marker just so I can let go. Get it back on, pull through. I think doing this process, it's also easier as I'm pulling through, since I'm using this new hook and it's a lot skinnier, it's seeming to glide through much easier. So that's a bonus. Let me just get rid of this now. Moving up to that next set. Getting the other band. Again, pull through everything on your hook. Next, get this back on. Somehow or other, I always want to forget to grab that last loop and slide it back on. Now there are other ways to stitch together. I think there are ways that might be a little bit simpler, but it's going to flatten out the edges, and I can show you an example on my bunny here, how it sort of makes it flat and squished together. This is more of that zigzag look. And I didn't want that for the fortune cookie. So let me just take this out. Now here I'm up to my next clip, so I'm just going to take that out. So we're almost halfway here, or about to the halfway point. I think it's easier if you remove that clip before you try and pull your band through, but really you could do it either way. Now when we make it to where my white clip is, that's where we have that loose band. So I think what I'm going to do is just leave the stitch marker in for just that part here. Make sure I'm going through the 2 sets of stitches plus the loose band. Now I can take it out. Now I'm also getting the other end back on, so it's going to be quite full. Slide through everything, and it looks like I have 2 rubber bands left, and I had counted out 15. So I'm going to go, now where we just connected this, that is actually going to be our next stitch. On this side, that was actually our loose band. Go through that, the next one. And then that is going to be my last one. I do have 1 additional band, but I'm going to use that to tie it off. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to carefully take out my hook. I want this to be in the middle where I tie it off. So I'm going to go to this next stitch down, the next empty stitch, push through from the inside out, grab that band, pull it through so it's in the middle. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. So let me just take this out so you can see a little better. We have our loose band. I'm going to go through the next stitch from the inside out, grab that, and pull that through to the middle. So all I've done is worked my two ends from the outside, so now they're in the center. I'm going to take this additional band, pull through both, make a nice and tight slip knot, and then what I need to do is reach inside. I'm just going to pull that in and hide it. Now you can see I just pulled it to the outside. I don't want it to poke out, but I do want it to be pretty secure inside there. So now we've tied that off, we've left a little opening, and that's going to be where we put our little paper, our little fortune. So here's my one fortune cookie where I have my love, hugs, and good fortune. And on this new one here I'm going to do your one smart cookie. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to take your paper and you're going to just slide it in. Now, since this is rubber, it does grip this pretty well. I think it stays in there fairly well. I mean, of course, if you tug on it, it's going to come out, but I think it'll sit in there fairly well. And you can change the angle of it if you want to. And if you were worried that it's going to come apart, you could always take a very small hole punch and make a hole. Just make sure it's not too close to any of the edges, and then you could stick a rubber band that went through either side and also through that hole punch and tie it off. But I think it's going to hold really nicely in there. So I think it's a cute little party favor. If you just wanted to do something small for somebody, you could put a thank you message, you could put a happy birthday message. Really, the possibilities are endless. So I hope that everyone loves their new little fortune cookies and that you liked my review on the Loomiloom. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook. You can post pictures of your creations to my Facebook page, and please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that way you can stay up to date on my latest tutorials. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please feel free to leave your pictures and your comments there too. If you post any pictures on Instagram, don't forget to tag me, and you can feel free to subscribe to those as well. Thanks for watching!